And that brings me now to the current events. And in this particular issue, we say that we devote much of this issue to deeply disturbing developments in Trump's immigration world, including alarming attacks on tourists, legal aliens, and green card holders, which many legal scholars deem to be lawless. We also address the controversy surrounding the antique Alien Enemies Act from 1798, which Trump wants to apply to certain immigrants, but which has only been used 3 times in the past during times of war. And there's a reason why it was only applied in times of war. And so in our update, we have a lot of articles about the immigration situation. Articles entitled Immigration Abuses, ? Green card holders concerned, more aggressive tactics, perilous times for personal liberty, why the AEA, the Alien Enemy Act, is deemed to be unlawful, what the Alien Enemies Act really even says, unquestioned authority, ? Collateral damage, ? A lie or illegal action, ? What the Court of Appeals thinks, and so much more. The Alien Enemies Act requires, and we have it actually quoted, that the United States of America, first of all, has declared war on another country. Otherwise, it doesn't even apply. So the act is being now applied against gang members without the United States ever having declared war on Venezuela. So for that reason alone, the application of this law in this case, even if we say the law is constitutional, many feel it's not, but even if it is, the application would be completely wrong. It would be completely unjustified. That's just one example of how quickly we can lose our liberties, our freedoms. One scholar was saying that Trump's decision to apply the AEA is within his sole power and cannot be reviewed by the courts. If that's true, we have complete dictatorship in this country. That can't be true. But that is what's being looked upon. That's what's being discussed. That's what's being debated. Now, Trump has now asked the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, to look into this matter. The question is, are they going to do it for the simple reason that normally they'd never do it if we are talking about just a preliminary injunction as we are talking about here. But we'll see what they're going to do, or whether they're going to wait until the case is actually tried and then appealed, and then it's reaching the United States Supreme Court, which can take years. In the meantime, the people over there who are now in prisons in El Salvador, some of whom have said we are not gang members at all, but they never had a chance to explain themselves because there was no due process, nothing. They were just taken, shipped away. So if you don't see this to be a major problem, then I don't know what you are going to see. Well, of course, we also talk in our Standing Watch program, this chat group fiasco, also the fact that certain unkind statements were made in that chat group discussion regarding Europe, and the Europeans don't react very kindly towards that, and there's so much more, which we are addressing in the Standing Watch program. We also asked the question whether Trump is planning to run a third time, and there is actually a debate whether the Constitution prohibits only 2 consecutive terms, or whether it prohibits 2 terms, whether there was a pause in between or not. But in any event, we are saying at the end of this article, the way things are going, will the United States even survive the next 4 years, let alone 8 years? So the question may be actually moot. Now, we are talking about Greenland. The fact that Greenland had it, as the New York Post puts it, and here is the statement by Greenland's Prime Minister, Igede. He said, "Until recently, we could trust the Americans, but that time is over." And of course, then it was announced that Mrs. Vance, the US Second Lady, was visiting Greenland. Now, Greenland didn't act very kindly towards that visit, so it was later changed. And so then, of course, Mr. Vance also accompanied his wife and some others, but they were just visiting the American base in Greenland. But while there, Mr. Vance, who has become extremely outspoken with his opinions, has blasted Denmark and has stated the following: Denmark has failed to secure the region as it was 30, 40 years ago. Our European allies have not kept up with the pace in military spending. Denmark has failed to keep our troops and its own people safe. It's far better to come under the US security umbrella than the Danish security umbrella. He said US has no option but to take a significant position to ensure the security of Greenland. Mr. Trump added, we need Greenland. Very importantly, for international security, we have to have Greenland. It's no question of, do you think we can do without it? We cannot. He added, and we are not talking about peace for the United States, we are talking about world peace. We are talking about international security. And right now, you look at it, you have warships all over the place going through right along Greenland. He said the United States was not going to let that happen. Now, after Mr. Vance's words, Denmark reacted. And the Danish Foreign Minister Rasmussen expressed his dissatisfaction over the tone of US Vice President J.D. Vance's comments that Copenhagen had not done enough for Greenland. This is not how you speak to close allies, he said. And then also the Danish Prime Minister hit back, as I just said, at Vance and said also, for many years we have stood by the Americans in very difficult situations. The Vice President's reference to Denmark is not accurate. And so this thing is not going to go away. The feeling is that Mr. Trump is extremely serious about taking Denmark, whatever that may mean. Now, the Europeans are extremely serious about not allowing that to happen. So here we have another situation where things can go easily out of hand. We also talk in our update about Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan's dictatorship continuing. There are big demonstrations over there after his challenger was arrested, and thousands of people were arrested and journalists were arrested. And then there is a comment, somebody is saying, well, you know, it's thus unacceptable for Turkey's democracy to allow these things to happen. Now, the problem I have with that comment is, what democracy? I mean, there is no democracy in Turkey. I mean, this guy is a total dictator, and I thought I had another article, I can find it right now, about the fact that, unfortunately, the West has been extremely quiet about this, have not been saying anything, just about nothing. And of course, that's shameful, because the only ones who has said something, interestingly enough, is the outgoing German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz. Nobody else has. America has not. The rest of Germany has not. Britain has not. And so in the meantime, Erdogan's dictatorship is continuing. Mr. Trump recently said that Mr. Erdogan is a good leader. I don't know where in the world we can say that he is a good leader. That is shameful all by itself. Okay, going back to the update, we also talk about tariffs, and that at 25% tariffs have been announced to occur very soon on America's Liberation Day, as they call it. I think it's April the 2nd. And people are warning against this. I'd like to just read a statement from Newsmax saying Trump prepares for major escalation, that was published today. President Donald Trump is urging senior advisors to take a more aggressive stance on tariffs as the administration prepares for a major escalation in its global trade war. Despite calls from allies on Wall Street and Capitol Hill to adopt a more measured approach, Trump has been pushing for sweeping trade actions aimed at reshaping the United States economy. Trump has expressed regret over not implementing broader tariffs during his first term and has blamed advisors for persuading him to pull back. But then it is stated in another article by Express, also of today, Trump said the latest tariffs would come into effect on April 2, with charges on businesses importing vehicles starting over the next days. He warned American automakers. He said, if you are raising the price for cars in the United States because of that, you are in big trouble. And the automakers respond and say, well, who's going to pay? Because obviously prices will have to be raised. They're going to be so much more expensive now with these tariff measures. And so who's going to pay for that? Well, no answer. But according to Express, it says that Trump's tariff policy could potentially hit every single American with an extra $2,000 in annual costs. Great, isn't it? That's something Americans are not going to like, if that's what's going to happen, because Trump was elected in large part because Americans were sick and tired with the previous administration and the lies which were perpetrated by the Biden administration in so many different aspects and the censorship. But they also elected him because he said that he is going to make the economy better. And if the feeling is Trump keeps lying to them, like the Shed fiasco suggests it, and if the economy goes down the hill further, that's not going to be good. It's not going to be good news. Now, we also have a lot to say in our update about the quote-unquote peace treaty, I cannot even call it that way, but the ceasefire, I cannot even call it that way, between Kiev, Ukraine, and Russia. Now, we have said from the outset that Putin is not serious about this, and he will try whatever he can to sabotage that, not having to agree with this kind of a ceasefire. And of course, now the latest news is that not only is he sabotaging it, he's making demands he knows are not going to be fulfilled. AFP wrote that Russian President Vladimir Putin called Friday for a transitional administration to be put in place in Ukraine and vowed his army would finish off Ukrainian troops in hardline remarks as President Trump pushes for a ceasefire. The renewed call to essentially topple Ukrainian leader Zelensky was the latest demonstration of Putin's long-standing desire to install a more Moscow-friendly regime in Kyiv. There's a lot more to say, and we have written and are going to write a lot more about the situation. Also that Russia is threatening now France and England with a bloodbath, should France and England intervene in any way. But since the sermon I'm going to give will address this issue somewhat, I kind of save it for that. I just want to conclude with one more article, another shameful article. And that was published by Fox News, dated March 28. Los Angeles has only approved 4 permits to rebuild homes destroyed or damaged during the January wildfires in the Pacific Palisades that charred some 7,000 homes. The first permit was issued on March 5, less than 2 months after the Palisades fire swept through the Pacific Palisades and the surrounding area. The few permits have been touted by Major Bass as a milestone in the city's recovery, but local leaders and residents have criticized the slow permitting process. Now, do you recall, as I do, on about January 24, 2025, there was a discussion which was shown on television where Trump told Bass to waive all building restrictions and let those affected by the fires begin to rebuild within 10 days. And Bass seemed to agree to this in front of the cameras. She obviously lied. And so here we go again. all these nice talks, all these nice discussions, and the people are still suffering. Nobody is helping them. Nobody is standing up for them. It's a shame what's going on in this country. And unfortunately, as we have said from the outset, things will get so much worse. Let's not kid yourself. It's not going any better. It's going to go worse and worse and worse, because the downfall of the United States of America is preordained, it's prophesied, and we have reached a time where only if the vast majority of American citizens would repent deeply of their sins, things might at least be delayed, like the Ninevites repented, and God decided not to destroy Nineveh at the time. Do you really believe that it's going to happen? I don't. And that means, as I said earlier, do we even have still 4 more years for America's survival?